Okay, Rabosai, let's learn some Torah. We are toward the top of Yud Gimel Amud Beis. We'll be learning a lot of new types of information tonight, and that is as follows: Amar Rav Yehuda Bered Rav Chia, Shamati shetfilas etzba mifageles bechatas pnimis. We can go home now. There's so many different factors that are just added in here. First of all, tvilas etzba, just placing one's finger into the dam, that's not a typical avoda, right? It's not the zrika, it's the tvilas dam. You're just sticking your finger into the liquid. If you have a machshava during that time, so what Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav Chia is that it's mefagel, it ruins it. Your machshava in that tfilas etzba ruins it, but only for a chatas pnimis, only for the one that's done in the mizbeach hazav in the heichal. And says the Gemara, Shama Ilfa. Ilfa heard about this. Amra kame de Rav Pada, and he repeated it in front of Rav Pada. Amar Rav Pada then said, Klum lamanu pigul el mishlamim. Don't we learn about pigul from the world of shlamim? Ma shlamim ein tfilas etzba mefagelas behen. Just like when it comes to shlamim, sticking one's finger in while having a machshava, sticking your finger into the dam while having a machshava, mashlamim, we would say that there's no pigul. Avchatas ein tvilas etzba mefagelas bahem. So the same thing should be true by the chatas pnimis. So he questions this din. How can you say that we have pigul by tvilas etzba with the chatas pnimis? We know that that's not true. We learn from shlamim. Shlamim's are marimakom for pigul. Says the Gemara, why is shlamim mar makom for pigul? The Gemara says, "V'chia kol mi shlamim lamdu." Ima shlamim shelo lishma. When it comes to shlamim that's done shelo lishma, ein motzi midei pigul. If you do a shlamim shelo lishma, it's still eligible to become pigul. Afchata shelo lishma. Ein motzi midei pigul. The same thing should be true. If a chatas was done shelo lishma, it also should be eligible. It doesn't remove it from the world of pigul. If that's the case that we can't learn from shlamim, then why would it be that tvilas etzba by the chatas pnimis is going to be mefagel? Says the Gemara, it must be meribuya de kroka asya. It must be that it's learned from psukim. Hachanami, that it must be that our case too is meribuya de kroka asi. So it seems to be that the din that we have, that tvilas etzba by achatas pnimis, that it's mefagel, is not learned from the world of shlamim. Ella, it's learned from ribuya dekray. It's learned from numerous psukim. That's what the Gemara says. And similarly, we have a conversation like this with Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, be'aliyah zu shamati. I heard in this attic, shetfilas etzba mefagelas, that if one were to have a machshava, a pigul machshava with tfilas etzba, that it would be mefagel, it would ruin the korban. And then Tahi bar Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Reb Shimon ben Lakish did not like this at all. He questioned it. Klum lamdu pigul elam shlamim. Don't we learn pigul from shlamim? A total repeat of our conversation. After all, ma shlamim ein tfilas etzba mefagelas bahen. Just like by shlamim, this is a rejection. So just like by shlamim, if you are tovel, if you do tfilas etzba by a shlamim, that it's not mefagelas bahen. So too, avchatas ein tfilas etzba mefagelas bahen. So maybe we can't learn from there. Says the Gemara, "V'chia kol mishlamim lamdu." Absolutely not. Ima shlamim shelo lishma ein motzi midei pigul. Avchatas shelo lishma motzi midei pigul. Ein motzi midei pigul. So therefore, perhaps we can't learn from shlamim. And the Gemara says, well, wait 1 second. Amar Rabbi Yossi b'Reb Chanina, unlike our first approach, ein hakol mishlamim, ein. Yes, hakol mishlamim lamdu. Everything is in fact learned from there. And now we get into some of the more sophisticated thinking. And the Gemara says as follows, about halfway down on Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Hoel v'chutz l'mekomo posel b'shlamim. Since if a person were to have a machshava chutz l'mekomo, that pasels a shlamim, but v'shelo lishmo posel b'chatas, but kavana of shelo lishma, like our opening Mishnah, pasels a chatas, ma chutz l'mekomo. Just like if you have a kavana of chutz l'mekomo haposel b'shlamim, if you have a machshav of chutz l'mekomo that ruins the shlamim, and that's motzi midei pigul. Once you have that, and then a shlamim can no longer be in the pigul category. Af shelo lishmo haposel b'chatas motzia midei pigul. Maybe shelo lishma would also bring the chatas to that point where it's motzi midei pigul, that it's not shaykh to the world of pigul anymore. Gemara says you can't say that. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, mitzida tabra. I can actually break this on its own, meaning the proof you just tried to bring is not a good proof. And the Gemara says as follows: Malachutz l'mekomo haposel b'shlamim. When it comes to a machshav of chutz l'mekomo, which means that you're thinking about this korban to have it done in the wrong place, which passes by a shlamim, shekein noeg b'kol zevachim, that applies to all korbanos. Tomar, you should then say b'shelo lishmo when we're talking about without kavana she'eino noeg ela b'pesach b'chatos bilbad. That only has a limited application. So the rule of chutz l'mekomo applies by all zvachim, but shelo lishma applies only to chatas and pesach. Elamais lach lememar. So therefore, we have to come up with another explanation. So the Gemara says as follows: Davar haposel bohen motzian midei pigul. When we are talking about a shlamim, so something that pasels the shlamim, takes it out of the pigul category. Davar hame'akev bohen mevian lidei pigul, but something that is le'ikuva, that can in fact lead to pigul. Hachanami, the same thing should be true over here. The davar apostle b'motzi b'dei pigul, but davar hama'akev b'mevia lidei pigul, and that's talking about the example of dipping your finger in, and that's how he then learns that tfilas etzba is mefagel even by a chatas primis from this final comparison. Super easy sugya, piece of cake. Good. And Amar of Mari, Afana Nami Tanina, we learned about this already because Zehaklal, we have a halacha where there was pigul by a korban mincha. Kol hakometz v'nosin b'kli v'hamolich v'hamaktir. That this was a particular case where it became pigul, and this looks like we have many of the steps of shchita. Look at this. We have v'chol hakometz, that's the actual kmitza. And then we have nosein b'kli, that looks like Kabbalah. Then we have v'hamolich, which is holacha. And then we have v'hamaktir, which seems to be like the zrika. It seems like all the things are connected. Now, bishlam hakomei tzainu shochet, I see this comparison fully. It seems to be that the kmitza is similar to the shchita. Molech, hainu molech, that the process of walking the korban mincha to the mizbeach is similar to holacha. Makdir nami hainu zorek. So it says the Gemara, ela nosein b'kli mai nihu. It's a little bit of a weird question. We would have thought that nosein b'kli is obviously kibul, but we'll see that that's not so simple, and possibly even a machlokes tanoim. How does this play out? So the Gemara says as follows: ela nosein b'kli mai nihu ilema dedami lekabbalah. If you want to say that putting the korban mincha into a kli is similar to the blood being put into a vessel, says the Gemara, midami, those really aren't exactly comparable, because hasam, by the blood, mimela, there, the blood, gravity, right? You put the kli under the shchita line, blood's going to fall into the kli. But hacha, in regards to the korban mincha, ihu kashakil v'rami. No, the Kohen moved it himself and put it in the kli. It wasn't a midi de memela. It happened on its own. Ella, says the Gemara, kevan delo sagi delo yohiv, since there's no possible way to do the kmitza without a kli, so therefore al korche avoda chashuva, it must therefore be that it's considered an avoda chashuva, and if one were to have a negative kavana during that time, that would then be pigul. So it's a little bit unclear as to what it would be, but it's not exactly the same as the case of shchita, where it's automatic, but nevertheless it's a chashuv part of the program. So halchanami kevan delo sagi delo avidle al korche hainu holacha, seems to be that it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar to holacha. So says the Gemara, lo, I disagree to your comparison. Le'olam dedami lekabbalah. Don't say that the example of molich by the korban mincha is like the example of the kli shares, of collecting the flour into a kli is like holacha. Say le'olam dedami lekabbalah. That if you want to say the cases are different, that in one case the blood falls into the kli on its own, but when it comes to the korban mincha, it's placed there. Kevan de'idi v'idi matan klihu, since both of them end up in a kli one way or the other, the way it gets into the kli is irrelevant. Mali memela, Mali shakil v'yav. It doesn't make a difference to me how it gets there, as long as it gets there. So therefore, the kli, it really is Kabbalah. When we look at the Korban Mincha, that step of collecting the Korban Mincha in a kli shares, that is no different than the blood that is collected, even though it's automatic. I don't know that we would have ever made this distinction on our own to say that it's not similar. So that's what the Gemara concludes. And in fact, Lema Kitanoi, the Gemara says toward the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Beis, the Gemara says that perhaps we have a machlokas tanoim over here. The Tanichada, we have one brisa that says tfilas etzba mifagelas bechatas, that placing a finger inside the dam of a korban with an inappropriate machshava, that would be mefagel bechatas. V'tanya idach lo mifagelas v'lo mispagelas. Not only would it not be mifagel if you stick your finger and have that machshava, but even if you have a machshava that I'm later going to do that, the tfilas, it's still also not going to work. It says the Gemara, my love tanoihi, isn't this a machlokes tanaim? The Gemara says, no, both of the tanaim actually agree that tfilas etzba is going to be a critical avoda. Harabanan, harebi, and hareb Shimon, but they just disagree. Reb Shimon was of the opinion that that it can still not affect pigul in such a case. Says the Gemara, Reb Shimon, if that's true, my area tfilas etzba. If that's true, then why are we even dealing with tfilas etzba? Ha'amar, after all, turning to the top of Yadal and Aleph, kol she'enu al mizbeach achitzon kishlamim, ein bo mishum pigul. He holds that the only time we have pigul is when it's dealing like with the mizbeach achitzon. So how could our opening case that we started with, that there's tfilas etzba, that's mefagelas by the chatas pnimis, Reb Shimon would never hold that way. That's obvious. We know that from another place. So says the Gemara, you're right. What do we do with these two brises that are so sir one another? That in one case it's mefagel, in one case it's not mefagel to do tfilas etzba. So says the Gemara, lo hava harabanan. Really, everything is all within the sheets of the rabbanan. Below kasha, kan bechatos hachitzonos. One's dealing with the chatos hachitzonos. And therefore, one set of halachos would apply in kan v'chatos hapnimis, where we would have pigul, like the open of our Mishnah. So they don't hold like Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon holds that the pigul happens on the outer mizbeach, but the Rabbanan say that it happens on the inner mizbeach. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Chatos hachitzonios pshita. That should be pashat, that it cannot cause pigul. After all, lo ksiv behu v'toval, because there's no din where it says v'toval by that particular chatos. So says the Gemara Itzrich, we actually did need this halacha to teach us about chatos hachitzonios, even without the word v'toval, because sal kadai techamina, I might have thought ho luchsiv v'lokach, that it says he should take blood. So it doesn't say v'taval, but it does say he should take blood, v'lokach. It doesn't say v'taval. So what if it says v'lokach, he should take blood? V'asi kof. And let's say that a monkey shows up and rami lahu ayyadeh, and the monkey puts blood on the Kohen's hand. So then what we want to know is, does he have to redo this? Was this his own thing that he had to do? All of them. All of them. In the Beis Hamikdash. In the old city. Yeah. In the old city. It's pretty impressive. We have this all over Shas, actually. Monkeys are the same, like Maseches. We have it from the Gemara. In the Shulchan Aruch, we have this also. If a person if their hands were washed for them, like as a Maseches, is that a lechatchila netilas yadayim? But you're correct anatomically. And
theoretically, somebody could be in Africa doing whatever, and that would be an applicable case. Right.
True story.
Beit Mikdash isn't moving.
No, it is not. Hopefully,
Same concept. Yeah.
Correct. Is it sentient? To have a robot? Do they know you?
Not yet.
No. Let's keep it that way.
Not up to us.
No, also not up to us. So here, what we want to know is it doesn't say v'toval, that there's a formal commandment to be tovel. It only says v'lakach, that you have to take some blood. So v'asi kof, if in fact there was a monkey that rami lehu ayade, who put the blood on the Kohen's hands, boy lemishkal zimna acharisi, the Kohen might need to take more blood. Keman dechsi v'toval dami. And maybe he then has to do it again as though it was v'toval. Kamash malan lahachi lo ksi v'toval. Demashmahachi umashmachi. There's actually a double implication that we learn from the fact that it doesn't say v'taval. And the first thing that it teaches us is that tevila is not the kind of avoda that can bring about pigul, and it also teaches us that the Kohen still has to do the tefillah himself, this double-edged sword. That brings us to the two dots about 10 lines down. Let us continue in the Gemara. Reb Shimon machshir behiluch. Remember, we said that Reb Shimon held that if a person tried to have a pigul machshava during hiluch, remember shchita, kabbalah, holacha, zrika by the holacha, he held that that's not if you're shalom lishma at that point, you're good to go. And the Gemara now wants to explain his shita. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Mod Reb Shimon beholachas chatos apnimios shemachshava poselis behu hol ve'avoda she'en yichol levadla. What if you are bringing something into the pnim? So where's the shchita done? Outside. So then by definition, you need to do holacha. And if you need to do holacha, then the holacha becomes an ikr part of the avoda. Good. So then under those circumstances, the holacha becomes ikr. So even Reb Shimon wasn't purely categorical about holacha. If it was a scenario where I could do the shchita next to the mizbeach hachitzon, I didn't have to walk anywhere. Halacha is not critical. So let's just say this is the mizbeach hagadol, mizbeach hachitzon right here. I could have done the shchita over there, and then I would have had holacha. There, what does he say about that holacha? That's not, you can't passel that holacha, because that holacha was not requirement. I could have done the shchita right next to the mizbeach and not have had to walk at all. However, if I needed to do a zrika inside the heichal and the shchita is outside the heichal, then holacha is a requirement, and therefore I have to make sure that I can get there, and therefore hol ve'avoda she'en yachol levatla. Then we would say that you can passel that particular holacha. Says the Gemara, the Amar Reb Shimon. Hold on 1 second. Kol she'eno al mizbeach hachitzon kishlamim ein chayavin alav mishum pikol. He says that kol she'eno al mizbeach hachitzon kishlamim, that if it's not on the outer mizbeach like a shlamim, ein chayavin alav mishum pikol, then there really is no pikol, which means that according to Reb Shimon, in regards to the chatas hapnimis, that it could never become pikol. So the Gemara says, Amar Reb Yossi Reb Chanina, that Modeh Haya Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon was of the opinion. What? Yeah, Modeh Haya. Yeah, what did I just say, Reb Shimon? Yeah. That's so funny. Amar Reb Yossi, Reb Chanina, Modeh Haya Lifsol Mikal V'chomer. He said that there is a kal v'chomer. Uma shelo lishman, when it comes to a shelo lishma kavana, shehuchshru b'shlamim, pasal b'chatas, that's our Mishnah on Daf Beis, that if you have a kavana shelo lishma by shlamim, that it's pasal. Chutz lizmano sheposel b'shlamim, eino din sheyifsol b'chatos, that if you have a kavana that's outside of zman, which is posel b'shlamim, all the more so, it should pasal chatos. So that's the kal v'chomer that he wants to use to prove his shita, that he holds that even if it were to be in the pnimis, you would be chayiv. So says the Gemara, ba'ashkechan chutz lizmano. We found in this Mari Makom that you can have a kavana that passes chutz lizmano. What about chutz l'mekomo minalan? From how do we know that a kavana of makom could ruin a korban? If you wanted to learn it from Izmano, imi chutz lizmano, so then the Gemara says, ma lechutz lizmano shekein kares. The case of chutz lizmano is kares, but the case of chutz l'mekomo is not kares. You cannot learn it from there. Imi shelo lishma, if you want to learn it from the world of shelo lishma, shekein noeg bebama. This is already a side din, but we're not going to dig into this. But when it comes to a bama, shelo lishma applies over there, but it's not the same as chutz l'mekomo. So the Gemara wants to say, well, wait 1 second. Shelo lishman b'may noheg. Where is it that we have shelo lishma applying? Shelo lishma has a narrow applicability. Let's remember the basics of our Mishnah on Daf Beis. The basics of our Mishnah is that shelo lishma, on your average korban, on shlamim, on ola, according to most Tanaim, that leaves us with a scenario where the korban is kosher, but you're not yotze in regards to, there's not meratze, you still need to replace it and still do your chiyuv again. But says the Gemara, by a Pesach and a Chatas, that's not true. So shelo lishman b'may noeg, where do we have a psul from shelo lishma? The Gemara says, b'Pesach v'chatas, and Pesach v'chatas, b'bama lo karbo. You can't bring a raya from a bama one way or the other. So therefore, the Gemara says that the psul of shelo lishma does not apply to a bama at all. So then the Gemara says, "V'baisema hekesha." We might actually have a hekesh that teaches us about mekomo. The pasuk says shlishi, and what does that mean? Shlishi ze chutz lizmano. That's talking about zman. When it says pigul, ze chutz lemekomo, and that teaches us that we have a mar makom, that there's a psul if your kavana is chutz lemekomo. Amar Rava. Rava has a multi-tiered explanation that requires a little bit of knowledge of the layout of the Beis HaMikdash. So basically, the Mizbeach HaGadol, let's say this is the Mizbeach HaGadol, and this is the Ulam, and then this is the Heichal. So, right, I'm facing this way, the Mizbeach's right in front of me, and then there's a little bit of space, Bein HaMizbeach LeUlam, and then there's the ulam, which is attached to the Heichal, and the Kodesh HaKodesh was at the end of that room. Rava is going to be speaking about where it is, where are the limits of when we have all of these psulim.
This diagram is entirely inside the Kodesh.
Well, the diagram starts outside the Kodesh. It starts with the Mizbeach HaGadol, which is outside the Heichal. So you have the Mizbeach HaGadol, Bein HaMizbeach LeUlam, then you have the 5 amos of the Ulam, then you have the Heichal, and then you have the Kodesh. We're not going to talk about the Kodesh HaKodashim today, but we're going to talk about everything else. So, Amar Rava, Im Tim Salomar, Reb Shimon Savar La Kibrei. If you want to say that Reb Shimon holds like his son, what did his son hold? De Amar, Bein Ha'ulam V'Lamizbeach Tzafon. That's what he referred to that space. He referred to the space between the Mizbeach and the Ulam as Tzafon. Then he says, "Ein machshava mo'eles beholachas chatos hapnimios, elami pesach ulam v'lifnim." When is it that a machshava would ruin an activity of holacha? That's only mi pesach ulam v'lifnim. So that means I did the shechita outside. It only becomes problematic when I get to the door. Why? Because holacha outside of the heichal, that's never a requirement. I could have done the shechita next to the ulam. So there's no reason why the holacha between the place where I shechted and the doorway to the ulam should be problematic. That is his first comment. And then ve'im tim salomar, and there's going to be a bunch of ve'im tim salomars. Ve'im tim salomar savar la ki Reb Yehuda. And if you want to say that perhaps Reb Shimon also holds like Reb Yehuda, the Amar toch azara mekadesh, anything within the azara is mekadesh. So then ein machshava mo'eles beholacha siluk bazichim. This is talking about the levona, which is I think the English is frankincense, which was used in the Beis HaMikdash by certain breads. So then ein machshava mo'eles beholacha siluk bazichim. Then you couldn't have pigul in those cases. Elami pesach heichal v'lachutz, only outside toward the ulam. Because it all happened right there. Because even though the shulchan wasn't placed right next to the ulam, technically speaking, the ulam could have been put anywhere in the heichal. So if you have the heichal room that's connected to the ulam, so in the heichal we had the shulchan over here, the menorah over here, and the kodesh hakodashim over. But anywhere in that room, we had a specific place for it, but we really could have brought it to the door. So then the halacha only takes place at that specific spot, because in theory we could have had it over there, and that's in regards to the levona, in regards to the siluk bazichin. Ve'im tim salomar savar kedushas heichal ve'ulam chadahi. Oh, this is already another. Let's say that the kedusha between the ulam and the heichal are not different, like we previously said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. By Rabbi Yehuda, the heichal at a higher level of kedusha than the ulam. But if you hold not that way, if Reb Shimon were to have held that the kedushas heichal and ulam are one, then ein machshava mo'eles el mi pesach ulam v'lachutz, then we wouldn't have had any pigul except for outside, because then in theory the shulchan could have been brought all the way to the ulam, because it's the same exact kedusha, which would mean that the only time you ever have a case scenario is when you are bringing something from outside the ulam right to inside the ulam. And ve'im tim salomar tocha pesach ke lifnim, if you want to say that in between the door frame of the ulam and into the ulam are the same, then ein machshava mo'eles al psia achas. There's only one step. Ela bichdei hoshatas yado. Then it's only really the extension of your arm from outside the ulam to inside. That could be the only time that we would ever trigger a machshavas pigul. And lastly, the Gemara says, "V'im tim salomar savar holacha shelo b'regel lo shema holacha," that standing still is not going to be problematic. Then ein machshava mu'elas klal. Then there's no such thing as having a machshavas pigul when it comes to the levona at all. There's no, because standing still isn't problematic. So there are all these various layers based on the shitas of the Tanoim as to whether or not we'd say machshavas pigul applies to the levona. Good. Amar le Abaye le Amore de Rav Chizda. Abaye said to the Amora of Rav Chizda. This, of course, we know historically that the what we call Amoraim, Rav Chizda, he had an Amora. He had a speaker, Amar. The person had a very loud, booming voice. So that person would be the speaker. So Abaye said to the person who was the Amora for Rav Chizda, Boy mineme Rav Chizda holacha bizar mahu. Please ask Rav Chizda. It's almost like a gabbai. So he says oh, yeah. I did not see that. Oh, that's very interesting.
Not that it changed.
Unless it was a Girsa change.
Yeah, I believe that's what it means. That Rav Sheshes said.
No.
You're very good at this.
Abaye.
Who lived when?
Amar le Abaye le Amore de Rav Chizda. Boy mine me Rav Chizda.
Right.
So let's see. Let me see what the correction is here. It says here, letter Yud, Boy mine pirush she'amar le Amora she'yishael me Rav Chizda.
Right. Was it Abaye or Rav Sheshes? Who lived at the same time as Rav Chizda?
I have him on Maseches Shas. Nun chup ayin Rav Sheshes.
Tess.
Yeah, same.
Tess. You're saying Os Katan Tess?
There's Nusach.
I think that's the second one. I think the first one just quotes the whole piece.
Nusach Acher, yeah. Nusach Acher is Rav Sheshes. Amar le Rav Sheshes le Amore de Rav Chizda. I don't know what generation he was.
Rav Chizda, second generation.
Third. Rabbas third. Abaye was fourth. Rav Sheshes was also third. No, I think Rav Sheshes was. I literally have a chart in the back of my car. Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway.
Not sure. Anyway, somebody said to the Amora of Rav Chizda, they said, what is the deal with holacha bizar mahu? What if you have a non-Kohen doing the holacha, obviously in a case where it matters, because it doesn't always matter. So, Amar le, Rav Chizda said, Kshera umikra mesayeni. And I have psukim that help me. Look at this pasuk. It says, Vayishchetu, what?
We'll just keep going.
No, that's a good question.
The shechita was done where?
Typically, the shechita is done by the next to the mizbeach hagadol.
So
that's Ezra's Kohanim. That's Ezra's Kohanim. The Ezra's Yisrael was close. Should be Chayv Kares Lachar, no? I don't know.
Even Levim were only able to stand on
At the top there, whatever,
Yeah.
by the top of the stairs, overlooking the Ezra's Kohanim.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Add it to the list.
Add it to the list. Good question. I hate when I miss those questions. That's a good one. Amar le, he says, Kshera umikra mesayeni, I have psukim that support me. The pasuk says, Vayishchatu es ha-Pesach, they shechted the korban Pesach, Vayizru ha-Kohanim es hadam yadam, v'halavim mafshitim. A little bit of an interesting pasuk. What do we see that the Kohanim did? The Zrika. So the Chura, the holacha could have been done, even by a Zar. Masiv Rav Sheshes, hold on one second. How can you say that? Zar the onain, if you have a Zar,
change.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
Why did Gemara change from Abaye?
By the Nusach of Sheshes.
It's a conversation.
Now it works.
No.
lav dafka. It's not mukhrach.
But
Yeah, but it's not a reason to.
it is. That's the original source. That's the source.
And where's this?
In
Yuma. Is that what?
You were limbed out in the base?
Yeah. That's
Limbed out in the base.
Mem Tessim al. Yeah. Do you have Mem Dalet in your thing?
I have for the one.
My os katan ches and Mesoras Hashas.
Oh, you were in Testament off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you were looking the words before.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I saw that. Yeah. So Rav Sheshes says, hold on one second. Azar, a non-Kohen, the onain, someone who's responsible to bury dead before, so they're an immediate family member. Shikur, a Kohen who is not doing too good. Well, I guess he's drunk. Ubalmum, bikabala beholacha bezrika pasal. So we wanted to say, hey, wait 1 second. Azar is allowed to do the holacha. Yet what we see over here from Rav Sheshes and Abraisa is Azar's puzzle to do halacha. V'chein yoshev, if you have a kohen who's sitting down, v'chein small, if you have a southpaw, tiyuvta.
Isn't it that shiur of Balmum?
What? Shikr is not the balmum.
No, I understand. What's the live?
No, it starts at the bottom of the previous page where it says Azar. We were talking about Azar. So Zar ve'one. Yeah. It's Zar ve'one. These are other examples. That's okay. So in all of those cases, we see that they're puzzle, also a kohen who's sitting, also a lefty, tiyuvta. So says the Gemara, well, it's nice that you have a tiyuvta, but v'harav chizda kraka amar. It's nice that you don't agree from a brisa, but I think the pasuk wins. So the Gemara says, well, kind of, but what we're talking about is the Avid Maisa Itztaba. The guy is standing there like a log, he's not moving at all. So is that called holacha? So that's why we have different cases. If the person is standing there, he's doing holacha in that he's holding the container, but he's not walking. So that would be the example that's from the psukim, where we see that it's mutter. But if he's taka walking, so that would be problematic, which was the brisa. 4 lines down, Rabba vi Rav Yosef, the Amri Tarbayu, holacha bezar machlokes Reb Shimon v'Rabbanon. That the Azar who is carrying the blood, that is a machlokes Reb Shimon and the Rabbanon. Reb Shimon de Amar avoda she'efshar levatla lav avodahi, that if a person's doing part of the korban process, but it's an unnecessary part of the korban process, so that is considered to be a lav avoda, and therefore ksheira bizar, and therefore they hold that it's absolutely mutter for a zar because it's an unnecessary process. They could understand if it's necessary, but it's not necessary, and because it's not necessary, it's ksheira bizar. And the Rabbanon psula, but according to the rabbis, they don't agree with Reb Shimon. They hold that it would be psula for a zar to do holacha. So Amar Lahu Abaye. Abaye says back to Rabbah and Rav Yosef, wait 1 second. Shchita de avoda shi efshar levatla. Shchita is not like holacha. Holacha could be mevatel. If I do shchita next to the mizbeach, there's no holacha. Shchita, Kabbalah goes right, and I do the zrika sadam, I don't have to walk anywhere. But guess what? Shchita is mutter bizar. So if you have a shchita de avoda shi efshar levatla, ukshera bizar. So the fact that Rav Shimon wants to say that the holacha is not a requirement and therefore it's mutter bizar, shchita is a requirement and it's mutter bizar. So it can't be about the avoda being an ikar avoda. So then the Gemara says something that's absolutely shocking. Amruleh, they said shchita lav avodahi. A very difficult sentence. How can you say that shchita is lav avodahi? But it must be by virtue of the fact that a zar is allowed to do shchita. So let's say that he's standing in the Ezras Yisrael and he has a 10-foot knife and he extends. These were all the pictures that went around in COVID for all the Moal. And you've seen these pictures, the blades that were 6 feet long. You saw these.
No, I didn't.
You didn't see this?
I'm not in the Mohel chat.
No, this was you guys saw this, no? Yeah, they went. You missed it. I don't know. It was COVID. We had to stay 6 feet away. So they all of these memes of a moa with a 6 foot. It wasn't so cute, but it's also a very bad idea. Just mechanically, I would not recommend it.
Don't slip.
Yep, seriously, don't slip. So the Gemara says shchita lav avoda. Says the Gemara below, shchita is not an avoda. V'ha'amar Reb Zera amar Rab, shchitas para bizar psula. We see by the para aduma that it's certainly treated like an avoda. We don't even allow a zar to do that. So says the Gemara, v'amar Rab Allah elazar v'chuka ksivba, that from the words of Elazar and from the word chukah, so that's where we see that this is treated like an actual avoda. So that's a big problem. So now we have a stira. You wanted to say that shchita is lav avodahi, but we have when it comes to shchitas para bizar that it's psula when it's done bizar by the para aduma. So which one is it? The shiny para. The Gemara says the para aduma is different. The kache bedek habayisi. That has a different status. It's kache bedek habayis. It has a lower level of kedusha, but nevertheless, it's not. But nevertheless, the Gemara says that para aduma therefore has a different halachic status. Says the Gemara v'lav kol dechenhi, a little bit of a funny language that we don't say kol shekain, we changed it to kol dechen, a little bit of a strange version of the Gemara. Kache bedek habayis havi avoda. Kache mizbeach lav avodahi. You want to say that kache bedek habayis, which really is just a financial aspect of the Beis HaMikdash. You want to say that it's considered to be that the para aduma is kache bedek habayis and it's considered an avoda, but kache mizbeach are not an avoda? How can that be? So Amar Rav Shisha, Berei de Rav Idi, Midi dehave amaros negoim de lav avodahu bayakuna. He said it could just be there are certain things that may not be avoda, but they still require kohanim. They still require a kohen to do it. And look at negoim. When it comes to re'iyas negoim, it's not an avoda, but there's only one group of people on the planet who can paskin that way. Who is that? Kohanim. So it could be that that shchita is not an avoda. And again, the only thing that really helps me to get over that bitter pill is that the actual ikar of a korban is the zrika. It's not actually the shchita. The shchita enables the zrika. So that could be, but it's just interesting that we're kind of concluding that shchita is not an avoda.
Sadly, say of the or avoda, there's nothing else that makes an appearance in real life.
The what?
There's nothing else that makes an appearance. The what? Shchita we shot all the time.
Yeah.
You kind of have to get there because you're not going to slap
You're talking about today. Shchita is a matir, but it's not a. Yeah.
There's no
today
function in your life in which you're going to sprinkle blood anymore.
Today, right?
Except for during the avoda. Shchita is something
That has
other places in life.
It's something, but it's not an avoda. Yeah.
It would taking all the blood in the cup with anything we do in real life.
I mean, if you want the blood, you're weird, but
I was like, wouldn't that be exactly the same?
What?
Wouldn't that be exactly the same?
What are you doing? Shchita is a thing if you want to eat meat.
We'll stop right here at Vehorei Holeches Sivaram Lekevesh, and Yirtzeh Hashem will pick up. What day is it today? I don't even know. I don't know. Well, we're going to be doing a couple blot at a time over the next couple of days. The blot are shorter. Everyone relax. Everyone take a deep breath.
We're going to be off for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Correct. We're very far behind, but we'll have Kvitzas Haderech because the next many blot are actually pretty short. Maybe we'll do a marathon one night and do like 3 blot. Maybe. All right, we'll stop right here.